The fate of Will Holiday, who had lost his family, was predetermined: revenge and eternal pain. But he didn't take into account that his sworn enemy, the cruel bandit Colton, was obsessed with the idea of possessing other people's lives, and he would never stop. It seemed that Will would lose this battle, but an unexpected meeting with a girl strikingly similar to his deceased wife completely turned his world upside down. Could he, broken by pain, protect this new hope from the shadow of the past? This is an incredible story of rebirth and a fight for justice. The scorching Texas air of 1888 smelled of dust, whiskey, and gunpowder, but for William Will Holiday, it only smelled of bitterness. 2 years had passed since the day his wife Elizabeth and their little daughter Lily died during a bandit raid on their ranch. The flames that engulfed their house burned not only wood and flesh but also Will's soul, leaving ashes and emptiness in its place. He, once a respected ranger whose name was known from San Antonio to El Paso, was now just a shadow of himself. He lived in an abandoned barn on the edge of his destroyed ranch, overgrown, with a wild look that repelled even the few who dared to approach. His only companions were a bottle of whiskey and a rifle he never parted with. The meaning of his existence was reduced to one goal: to find the man who led the gang, Sam "Snake" Colton, and put an end to him, not for the sake of justice, but for revenge. This was the very pain that made him wake up every morning, the very pain that was the only living feeling in his petrified heart. In the local saloon, where the most notorious scoundrels gathered, rumors spread faster than shots from a Colt. One of them, whispered at the bar, caught Will's attention. A young, timid kid who had fled Colton's gang was saying that Snake was heading to the Mexican border to make a deal with one of the local crime lords, Don Carlos. Will felt something stir inside him, something that was more than just anger. It was an opportunity, his chance. He threw a few dirty banknotes on the table, grabbed his worn leather coat, and went outside, leaving behind puzzled looks and whispers. Now he knew where to go, and his goal was not just death, but something much more cruel: retribution. He had to make Snake feel what he felt every second of his empty, worthless life. Will spent several weeks in the saddle, following dirty, dusty roads, crossing parched deserts and serpentine canyons. His only food was crackers and jerky, and his only source of water was rare streams. He felt no fatigue, hunger, or thirst. His body was just a machine driven by thirst for revenge. He reached a small town called San Mateo, located right on the border with Mexico. The town was dirty, dusty, and full of dangers. On every corner, you could meet suspicious people who looked unkindly at anyone who wasn't one of their own. Will stopped at a dilapidated hotel where he could get information about Colton. The owner, an old Mexican with a wrinkled face, looked at him with caution. He said that Colton had arrived in town a few days ago and was staying at Don Carlos's ranch, which was located a few miles from the town. Will felt something clench in his heart. He was so close. The next morning, before dawn, Will saddled his horse and headed for Don Carlos's ranch. He was ready for anything. He was ready for a fight, for death, for the fact that he might never return. His rifle, which he guarded like the apple of his eye, was loaded. He knew that Colton was a cruel and cunning man, and that he would not be an easy target. But Will was ready for it. He was ready for his final battle. When he reached the ranch, the sun had already risen, illuminating the hills with its yellowish haze. The ranch was large, full of people, horses, and dogs. Will dismounted, hid behind a bush, and began to watch. He saw Colton, who was sitting on the porch, talking to Don Carlos. Will felt his heart beat wildly. He was so close. He raised his rifle, took aim, and froze. He saw that a young girl was sitting next to Colton, with a pale face and large, frightened eyes. She was tied up. Will lowered his rifle. He couldn't shoot. He couldn't, because his inner, forgotten code of honor, which was once a part of him, did not allow him to kill a man who was holding a hostage. Will decided to act differently. He went around the ranch, found a gap in the fence, and cautiously, like a shadow, entered the territory. He knew he could be discovered at any moment, but he was willing to take the risk. His goal now was not only to kill Colton, but also to save this girl. He was ready for it. He slowly moved deeper into the ranch, hiding behind buildings and haystacks. He saw that the girl had been led into one of the barns. Will followed her, and, hiding around the corner, began to listen. He heard voices. They were the voices of Colton and his men. They were laughing, discussing how they would torture the girl. Will felt something break inside him. He knew he had to act. He couldn't just stand and watch. He had to do something. He pulled out his knife and, getting ready, slowly opened the door. He saw that the girl was sitting on a chair, her hands and feet tied. Colton was standing in front of her, talking to her, his voice full of hatred. Will felt his heart clench. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was Elizabeth. His Elizabeth. The same girl who had died 2 years ago was alive. He wanted to scream, to rush to her, but he couldn't. He knew it wasn't his Elizabeth, but he saw her in her. He saw her eyes, her hair, her smile. He couldn't let her die. He rushed forward and, grabbing Colton's hand, pushed him away. He got ready for a fight. Colton, not expecting such a turn of events, fell to the floor. Will got ready for a fight. He knew what he had to do. He had to save this girl. He had to prove to himself that he still mattered. He had to do it for Elizabeth, for Lily, for what he had lost. He fought with Colton, and they rolled on the floor, hitting each other. Will was stronger, but Colton was more cunning. He pulled out his knife and, getting ready, stabbed him. Will felt something warm and sticky running down his arm. He looked at his wound and, grabbing Colton's hand, pushed him away. He was wounded, but he was happy. He was happy because he wasn't alone. He was with her. And he was ready for what the future would bring them. After a bloody struggle, Will Holiday stood, leaning against the wall of the barn, his shoulder burning with hellish pain from a knife wound. Thoughts swirled in his head, changing like a sandstorm in the prairie. The girl he had saved was so similar to Elizabeth that his heart ached with bitterness and deceptive hope. She was trembling, pressed against the far wall, her huge eyes full not only of fear but also of gratitude. Will stared at her, trying to find at least one difference from his lost ideal. He couldn't understand what kind of cruel trick of fate had brought him together with this girl, and why she was so similar to his wife. Don't, she whispered as Will took a step toward her. Don't come closer, please. Don't be afraid, he replied in a hoarse voice he didn't recognize himself. I won't hurt you. I'm Will Holiday. You. Who are you? Selena. Selena Reyes. Her voice was as fragile as a twig in the desert. Thank you. You saved me. But you're wounded. Will ignored his wound. He looked at Selena, and in his soul, where there had previously been only emptiness, a new, incomprehensible feeling was born. It was despair. He had lost Elizabeth forever, and this girl, who looked like her, was just a painful reminder of his loss. He wanted to forget about her, wanted to leave, but something held him back. He couldn't leave her alone in this dangerous place, and he couldn't stop looking into her eyes, which were exactly the same as Elizabeth's. Is Colton still here? He asked, looking around. Selena nodded. His men are everywhere. They were going to sell me to Don Carlos. Suddenly, it dawned on Will. Don Carlos was a notorious slave trader. Colton hadn't come here for nothing. He was going to sell Selena, like a thing. Anger flared up in Will's heart again, but it was different. Not blind, destructive, but sharp and directed. It was the anger of a protector, the righteous fury of a man who could not allow such injustice to happen. Together, they quickly got out of the barn, trying to stay in the shadows. The noise on the ranch was loud, and this played into Will's hands. He made his way between the stables and wagons, covering Selena with his body. His wound burned intolerably, but he felt no pain. The only thing that mattered was her. He had to get her to a safe place. As they ran, Selena told him that her father, a farmer who lived on the outskirts of Texas, had been killed by Colton's men. Her mother had died long ago, and she had to flee. She had no one but her horse. Will felt an even greater connection with her. He, like her, was alone. Like her, he had lost everything. Finally, they reached the forest. It was quiet and cool there, and Will felt more at ease. He found a small stream, and, kneeling, began to drink water. Selena followed his example. Will took a piece of cloth from his bag and, wetting it in the water, bandaged his wound. He felt Selena watching him. He couldn't understand why. What was so special about him? He was just an old, broken man. You're a good person, Selena said. Will didn't answer. He didn't consider himself good. He was just a man who had lost everything. But Selena continued. I saw how you looked at me. You lost someone, didn't you? Will nodded. My wife and daughter. Colton killed them. Selena was silent for a moment. I'm so sorry. I know how painful that is, but you shouldn't lose hope. You saved me. That means something. Her words seemed to pierce him. Will had never thought about it from that perspective. He just wanted revenge. But by saving her, he found something new. He found a purpose. He found a new meaning. Now he had to protect Selena. He had to get her to a safe place. He had to become her protector. This was his new calling. We need to go, he said, getting up. Colton won't leave us alone. He'll be looking for you. I know, Selena replied. He's like that. He doesn't like it when something gets in his way. We have to be very careful. They walked all night. Will didn't feel tired. He was filled with new energy, a new purpose. He was protecting Selena. She needed him. And this feeling was stronger than any pain, any despair. At dawn, they came to an old, abandoned shack. Will decided they could rest there. He made a small fire, and they sat, leaning against each other. Will looked at Selena, and suddenly, he realized that she wasn't just similar to Elizabeth. She was different. She was strong, brave, and she was able to survive her tragedy. There was no despair in her eyes, only determination. He realized that she wasn't just a replacement for Elizabeth. She was a person who could help him find new meaning. He realized that she wasn't just a reminder of the past. She was hope for the future. Will, Selena whispered, and there was a hint of guilt in her voice. I know you. You saw something in me, something you lost, but I'm not her. I'm not your wife. Will smiled softly. I know, he replied. I know, Selena, but you gave me something back, something I thought I had lost forever. He didn't say what he had found, but they both knew. He had found his path. He had found a new meaning in his life, and he was ready for what the future would bring them. The night in the desert was cold and merciless, but for Will Holiday, it was the first peaceful moment in the last 2 years. He slept by the fire, and Selena sat next to him, wrapped in his worn cloak. He didn't sleep soundly. Every rustle, every crackle of a twig made him instinctively grab his revolver. The wound on his shoulder pulsed, but he paid no attention to it. Selena's words, the very words that had sown the seed of enlightenment in his devastated soul, swirled in his head. You shouldn't lose hope. You saved me. That means something. Before, his life was one continuous pursuit of retribution. He didn't think about the future, didn't care about the present. But now, sitting next to Selena, he realized that his revenge was an empty, meaningless act. What would Colton's death change? It wouldn't bring Elizabeth and Lily back. It wouldn't heal his wounds. It wouldn't fill the emptiness in his heart. But saving Selena, that was something else. It was an act that had weight, that had meaning. He had done a good deed. And this feeling, this new understanding, was stronger than all the pain and hatred he had accumulated. At dawn, Selena woke up, and Will saw her eyes shining in the light of the rising sun. We have to go, he said, his voice confident. We need to get to the nearest town. There we can buy food, water, and medicine, and we'll be safe. Selena nodded, but her gaze was full of anxiety. What about Colton? She asked. He won't rest until he finds me. He said I'm his property. He won't find us, Will reply, and his voice sounded more confident than ever. I know this land, and I will protect you. They went west, staying away from big roads and populated areas. Will, once a tracker and ranger, had now regained his skills. He noticed the slightest tracks on the ground, heard every rustle in the bushes, and felt danger from a distance. He taught Selena how to survive in the wild, how to find water and food, how to stay unnoticed. He saw how she, once fragile and frightened, became stronger and more confident. There was no longer fear in her eyes, only determination. She was his student, his companion, and in a way, his new purpose. When they finally reached a small town called Palm Creek, Will felt the tension he had been holding inside him ease a little. He found a small hotel where they could rest, and bought them both new clothes. Selena chose a simple, a beautiful dress that perfectly suited her figure. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. It was the first sincere smile Will had seen on her face, and that smile warmed his heart. At the hotel, Will told Selena more about his past life. He told her about Elizabeth, about Lily, about how they died. He spoke about it calmly, without anger or pain, as if he were telling a story about someone else. Selena listened carefully, not interrupting. When he finished, she just took his hand. I understand, she said. You've been through a terrible tragedy, but you shouldn't let it define who you are. You can be more than just a man who seeks revenge. These words became the last link in the chain of his enlightenment. He realized that his life shouldn't be a cycle of revenge and despair. He can use his skills and strength to do good, to protect those who need protection. His new goal was much bigger than just revenge. It was about life, about hope, about the future. He looked at Selena, and suddenly he saw in her not just a reminder of the past, but a living, breathing person, with her own dreams, fears, and hopes. He felt how his heart, which had been empty and cold, began to slowly but surely fill with a new feeling. He knew that Colton wouldn't leave them alone. He was a man who never gave up. The Will was no longer afraid. He was ready for a fight. He was ready for what the future would bring them. He was ready for the fact that they, like all people, would face difficulties. He was ready because he wasn't alone. And he knew that he would fight not only for Selena, but also for himself, for his new life. "Let's eat," Will said, getting up. "We have a long way to go, and we need to be strong." They went down to the dining room, and Will ordered them food. They ate, talking about their future. They talked about what they would do when they were safe. They talked about their dreams and hopes. Will saw how Selena came to life, how she became herself, and he understood that he no longer lived in the past. He lived in the present, and he was happy. Palm Creek turned out to be a temporary refuge, but Will knew that Colton wouldn't give up. Tension hung in the air, and every passerby seemed like a potential enemy. Will and Selena didn't leave each other's side. Their silent bond grew stronger. In the few days they spent in town, Will managed to heal his wound and replenish his supplies. He sold one of his old, worn revolvers to buy a new, more reliable rifle, which now hung on his back. The new destination was north. He wanted to get to Wyoming, to a small, quiet town where he had an old acquaintance who owned a ranch. There, they could hide from Colton and start a new life. One evening, as they were sitting on the hotel's porch, Will saw 3 men entering the saloon. He immediately knew they were from Colton's gang. They had the same markings as Colton. Will felt his heart clench. They had found him. He looked at Selena, who was sitting next to him. She saw them too. Fear reappeared in her eyes. Will put his hand on hers. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I won't let them harm you." He grabbed her hand and pulled her deeper into the hotel. They quickly exited through the back door and, saddling their horses, headed north. No one was following them, but Will was sure it was only a matter of time. He knew that these men would report their location to Colton, and he would pursue them with even greater force. Will felt the tension rise, but he didn't panic. He was ready for this. His new purpose, his new hope, gave him strength. Their path lay through snowy mountains and icy rivers. The cold was unbearable, but Will and Selena, gritting their teeth, continued their journey. They were forced to conserve food and water, but they didn't complain. They supported each other, giving each other strength. During the journey, they became closer. Selena told him about her dreams, that she had always wanted to be a teacher, and that she loved to read. Will told her about his plans, that he wanted to buy a small ranch and start life with a clean slate. They laughed and talked as if they were old friends, and not to strangers who were forced to flee from danger. One day, when they stopped to rest, Will noticed they were being followed. He saw 2 shadows in the distance on top of a mountain. They were on horseback. Will realized it was Colton and his men. He felt his heart clench. He was ready. He was ready for a fight. "Go," he said to Selena. "I'll hold them off. I'll follow you." Selena didn't want to leave. "No," she said. "I won't leave you. We're together." "No," Will said. "You have to go. You're my hope. I'll hold them off. I won't let them harm you." He kissed her on the forehead and, turning, headed toward the top of the mountain. He knew that this was possibly his last battle, but he was ready. He was ready to die for Selena, for his new hope. When Will reached the top, he saw Colton and his men. They were startled. Will realized they expected him to run, but he was ready for a fight. He was ready to protect Selena. He took out his rifle and, getting ready, waited. Colton and his men were approaching. Will felt his heart beat wildly. He was ready for a fight. He was ready to protect Selena. He was ready to give his life for her. He fired. One of the bandits fell off his horse. Colton and his men, not expecting such a turn of events, were confused. Will took advantage of the moment and, rushing forward, began to shoot. One by one, the bandits fell off their horses. Colton, realizing he couldn't handle Will, turned his horse and rode away, leaving his men behind. Will was wounded, but he was alive. He was alive because he wasn't alone. He was with Selena. He returned to her. She was crying, but there was no fear in her eyes, only relief. Will hugged her. He was happy. He was happy because he was alive, and because Selena was alive. He knew they weren't safe yet, but he was full of hope. He was full of hope for the future. "I thought I lost you," Selena said, burying her face in his chest. "No," Will said, "you won't lose me. I'll never leave you." And they continued their journey north, toward Wyoming, toward their new life. Will knew that many more trials awaited them, but he was ready. He was ready because he wasn't alone, and he was full of hope. The road to Wyoming turned out to be longer and more dangerous than Will could have anticipated. Colton, humiliated by his defeat, didn't give up trying to catch them. Their pursuit turned into a cruel game of endurance, where every day was a fight for life. Will and Selena were forced to travel through the wilderness, where there were no roads, only mountains, rivers, and impenetrable forests. Their clothes were torn, and their shoes were worn out. They ate berries, herbs, and fish that Will caught in the rivers. He felt that Selena was getting stronger and more resilient with each passing day. That same wild strength that helps one survive in brutal conditions appeared in her. One day, when they stopped for the night, Will noticed that Selena was shivering. He went up to her, and, touching her forehead, felt a fever. She was sick. Will felt his heart clench. He couldn't lose her. He couldn't. He knew he had to do everything to save her. He was ready to do anything to keep her alive. He put Selena in a sleeping bag and left her alone, while he went to look for medicinal herbs. He knew that herbs that could help with fever grew in these mountains. He searched for them for several hours, and when he found them, he immediately returned to Selena. He made a decoction, and, holding it to her lips, made her drink it. Selena, who was delirious, drank the decoction, and a few hours later the fever subsided. Will felt relieved. He was happy that Selena was alive. He knew he was ready to do anything to keep her healthy. When Selena came to, she looked at Will and smiled. "Thank you," she said. "You saved me. I thought I was going to die." "No," Will said. "You won't die. I won't let you die." They spent a few days in the mountains until Selena recovered. During that time, they became even closer. They talked about their lives, about their dreams, about their fears. Will told her about how he was once a ranger, and that he had always dreamed of protecting people. Selena told him about her father, who was a farmer, and that she had always dreamed of living in a quiet, peaceful place. They felt that they were not just two people who were fleeing from danger. They were two souls who were connected. When Selena recovered, they continued their journey. They felt that they had become stronger, that they could overcome any trial. They knew that Colton wouldn't leave them alone, but they were no longer afraid. They were ready for a fight. They were ready for what awaited them ahead. When they finally reached Wyoming, they found a small, quiet town called Green River. The town was surrounded by mountains and forests, and it was the perfect place for them. Will found his old acquaintance, who was the owner of a ranch. He was very happy to see Will and offered them to stay with him. Will and Selena agreed. They felt that they had found their home. They started a new life. Will worked on the ranch, and Selena helped him. They lived in a small house that was surrounded by flowers and trees. They felt happy. They were safe. They were together. Will felt that he had found a new meaning. He found it in Selena. He found it in the fact that he could protect her. He found it in the fact that he could love her. One day, as they were sitting on the porch, Will took Selena's hand. "I want you to know," he said, "I love you. I don't love you because you look like Elizabeth. I love you because you are you. You are my hope. You are my new meaning." Selena smiled, and her eyes filled with tears. "I love you too," she said. "I thought I would never find my happiness, but I found it in you. You are my hope. You are my new meaning." They kissed, and at that moment, they understood that they were not just two people. They were two souls who were connected. They were two people who had found their happiness. They were two people who were ready for what awaited them ahead. The happiness in Green River was complete, but fragile. Will and Selena made a life for themselves on the old friend's ranch, working from dawn to dusk, and every evening they fell asleep feeling safe. They learned to read each other with a single glance. Their conversations became deeper, and their silence, comfortable. Will understood that his love for Selena was not a replacement for his past love. It was a new, unique feeling that was healing his wounded heart. She was his new life, his new meaning, and he was ready to protect her until his last breath. On one rainy day, as they were sitting by the fireplace, Will heard a knock on the door. He took his rifle and cautiously opened the door. A man was standing on the doorstep, his face hidden under a wide cowboy hat. Will felt his heart clench. He immediately knew that this was no casual traveler. "What do you want?" Will asked, holding his rifle at the ready. The man raised his head, and Will saw his face. It was Colton. He was haggard, his face was gaunt, and his eyes burned with a crazy fire. He didn't look like the cruel and self-assured bandit he used to be. He looked like a cornered animal. "I came for what belongs to me," Colton said, his voice hoarse. "I know she's here, and you won't stop me." Will prepared for a fight. "She is not your property," he said. "She is a free person, and if you want her, you'll have to go through me." Colton laughed, and his laughter was full of madness. "Do you think you can protect her?" he said. "You're just an old, broken man, and I am the snake, and I never give up." He lunged forward, and Will fired, but Colton was faster. He dodged the bullet and, rushing at Will, stabbed him with a knife. Will felt a sharp pain in his arm. He fell to the ground, and Colton prepared to kill him. But at that moment, he heard Selena's voice. "No!" she screamed, rushing toward them. She grabbed Will's hand and pushed Colton away. "Get out!" she screamed. "Get out, or I'll kill you!" Colton, not expecting such a turn of events, was confused. He looked at Selena, and fear appeared in his eyes. He couldn't believe that this fragile, frightened girl, who was just his property, was now rushing at him with a rifle. He turned and left, leaving Will and Selena alone. Will, who was wounded, was lying on the ground, but he was happy. He was happy because Selena had saved him. She was his new hope. Selena quickly bandaged Will's wound, and they returned to the house. Will felt that he was not only a protector, but also someone who was protected. He was happy because he wasn't alone. He was with Selena. He was with her, and he was ready for what the future would bring them. "I thought I was going to lose you," Selena said, squeezing his hand. "No," Will said. "You won't lose me. We'll be together." They spent a few days recovering from Colton's attack. During that time, they became even closer. They talked about what they would do when Colton was caught. They talked about their dreams and hopes. Will felt that he had found a new meaning. He found it in Selena. He found it in the fact that he could be with her. One day, as they were sitting by the fireplace, Will took Selena's hand. "I want you to know," he said, "I won't protect you anymore. We will protect each other. We will be together." Selena smiled. "I know," she said. "We will be together, forever." At that moment, they understood that they were not just two people who were running from danger. They were two people who had found each other, who had found their new meaning, who were ready for what awaited them ahead. After Colton's attack, their life in Green River became more cautious. Will and Selena understood that they couldn't relax. Colton wouldn't back down. His revenge was now not only about Selena, but also about Will, the man who dared to challenge and humiliate him. They set up traps to warn them of any approaching person, and always kept their rifles at the ready. Despite the constant tension, their relationship grew stronger. Will taught Selena how to shoot a rifle, explaining how to aim and how to hold the weapon properly. He noticed that she had a talent. She learned quickly, and after a few weeks, she could already shoot with amazing accuracy. Will felt proud of her. She was not just a fragile girl who needed protection. She was strong and brave. They spent long evenings by the fireplace, talking about their past. Will told Selena about his work as a ranger, about how he and his partner once pursued a gang of robbers who had robbed a bank. Selena told him about her family, about how her father taught her to read and write, and that she had always dreamed of having her own library. They laughed and talked, forgetting for a moment that danger was following them. One day, when Will was returning from a hunt, he saw Selena sitting by a stream, crying. He went up to her and sat down next to her. "What's wrong?" he asked. I just can't forget," she said, wiping away tears. "I can't forget how they killed my father. I can't forget how Colton treated me. I can't forget that I lost everything I had." Will hugged her. "I know," he said. "I know, but you have to live. You have to live not only for me, but for yourself. You have to live, because you deserve it." Selena looked at him, and there was no longer sadness in her eyes, only determination. "You're right," she said. "I have to live, and I will fight." He smiled. "I know," he said. "I know." They returned to the house, and Will made them food. They ate in silence, but there was strength in their silence. They felt that they were not just two people who were running from danger. They were two people who had found each other, who had found their new meaning, who were ready for what awaited them ahead. A few days later, as Will and Selena were sitting on the porch, they saw two riders in the distance. They were on horseback. Will immediately knew it was Colton and his partner. They were in their trap. Will looked at Selina. There was no fear in her eyes, only determination. She was ready. She was ready for a fight. Go inside, Will said. I'll handle them. No, Selina said. I'll fight with you. We'll be together. She took her rifle, and they left the house together. Colton and his partner were approaching. Will and Selina were waiting for them. They were ready. They were ready for their final battle. The smell of snow and gunpowder mixed in the cold air. Will and Selina stood on a hill, looking at the two riders approaching their house. Will felt his heart beat wildly. He was ready. He was ready for the final battle. But he wasn't alone. Next to him was Selina, with a rifle in her hand and determination in her eyes. She was his new strength, his new hope. They're in the trap, Will said, and his voice was firm. I know, Selina replied. We'll be together. They waited. When Colton and his partner got closer, Will raised his rifle. He aimed at Colton, but his hand trembled. He couldn't shoot. He couldn't, because he saw in Colton not just an enemy, but a man who was just as broken as he was. He saw in him a man who was ready for anything for the sake of revenge. What's wrong, Will? Selina asked, noticing his hesitation. You're not going to let him get away, are you? No, Will said. I can't. He lowered his rifle, and Selina, without hesitation, raised hers. She fired. The bullet hit Colton's partner's head. Colton, not expecting such a turn of events, was confused. He looked at Selina, and fear appeared in his eyes. He couldn't believe that this fragile, frightened girl, whom he considered his property, had now killed his partner. Colton pulled out his revolver and shot at Selina. Will, without thinking, rushed forward, and, grabbing Selina's hand, pushed her away. The bullet hit his shoulder. Will fell to the ground, but he was happy. He was happy because he had saved Selina. Selina, seeing that Will was wounded, grabbed her revolver and shot Colton. He fell to the ground. Selina ran up to Will. You're wounded, she said. I know, Will said, and his voice was hoarse. But I'm okay. We're okay. They returned to the house, and Selina bandaged Will's wound. She was crying, but there was no fear in her eyes, only relief. They were safe. They were together. They were alive. The next morning, when Will woke up, he saw that Selina was sleeping, buried in his chest. He felt his heart clench. He was happy. He was happy because he was with her. He was with her, and he was ready for what the future would bring them. They spent several weeks recovering from the attack. During that time, they became even closer. They talked about their future, about their dreams, about their hopes. Will felt that he had found a new meaning. He found it in Selina. He found it in the fact that he could be with her. One day, as they were sitting by the fireplace, Will took Selina's hand. I want you to know, he said. I love you. I don't love you because you look like Elizabeth. I love you because you are you. You are my hope. You are my new meaning. Selina smiled. I love you too, she said. I thought I would never find my happiness, but I found it in you. You are my hope. You are my new meaning. They kissed, and at that moment, they understood that they were not just two people who were running from danger. They were two people who had found each other, who had found their new meaning, who were ready for what awaited them ahead. 2 years passed. Will Holiday was no longer the broken, revenge-obsessed man he once was. His eyes no longer burned with a crazy fire. Instead, there was calmness and wisdom in them. He and Selina lived in Green River, in their small, cozy house that they built with their own hands. Will worked as a sheriff, and he was the most honest and fair man the residents of that town had ever seen. Selina opened her own library, and children came to her every day to read and learn. She became the most beloved teacher in town. Their relationship was stronger than ever. They were not just husband and wife. They were partners, friends, two souls who were connected. They lived in peace and tranquility, and their happiness was complete. But they never forgot about the past. A portrait of Elizabeth and Lily hung on the wall of their house, and Selina took care of her father's grave every week. They remembered their past, but they lived in the present. They lived for themselves. One day, when Will was returning from patrol, he saw a man standing by his house. He was dressed in dark clothes, and there was a mask on his face. Will felt his heart clench. He immediately knew it was Colton. I knew you'd come, Will said, pulling out his revolver. Colton took off his mask, and Will saw his face. He was even more haggard than before. His eyes burned with a crazy fire, and his lips were chapped. He looked like a cornered animal. I came to take what belongs to me, Colton said, his voice hoarse. I came for her. And you won't stop me. She is not your property, Will said, and his voice was firm. She is a free person, and if you want her, you'll have to go through me. Colton laughed, and his laughter was full of madness. Do you think you can protect her? He said. You're just an old, broken man, and I am the snake, and I never give up. He lunged forward, and Will fired, but Colton was faster. He dodged the bullet, and, rushing at Will, stabbed him with a knife. Will felt a sharp pain in his arm. He fell to the ground, and Colton prepared to kill him. But at that moment, he heard Selena's voice. No, she screamed. Rushing toward them, she grabbed Colton's hand and pushed him away. Leave him, she screamed. I'll kill you. Colton, not expecting such a turn of events, was confused. He looked at Selena, and fear appeared in his eyes. He couldn't believe that this fragile, frightened girl, whom he considered his property, was now rushing at him with a rifle. He turned and left, leaving Will and Selena alone. Will, who was wounded, was lying on the ground, but he was happy. He was happy because Selena had saved him. She was his new hope. Selena quickly bandaged Will's wound, and they returned to the house. Will felt that he was not only a protector, but also someone who was protected. He was happy because he wasn't alone. He was with Selena. He was with her, and he was ready for what the future would bring them. They spent a few days recovering from Colton's attack. During that time, they became even closer. They talked about their future, about their dreams, about their hopes. Will felt that he had found a new meaning. He found it in Selena. He found it in the fact that he could be with her. One day, as they were sitting by the fireplace, Will took Selena's hand. I want you to know, he said, I won't protect you anymore. We will protect each other. We will be together. Selena smiled. I know, she said. We will be together, forever. At that moment, they understood that they were not just two people who were running from danger. They were two people who had found each other, who had found their new meaning, who were ready for what awaited them ahead. 10 years passed since that rainy day, when Colton last appeared in their lives. He never returned. His tracks were lost in the endless expanses of the Wild West, and over time, his name became just a dark legend told around a campfire. Will and Selena's life in Green River was filled with peaceful happiness. Their love, hardened by trials, became as strong as steel. Will, now respected sheriff, watched over the town with wisdom and calmness, and Selena, whose library became the heart of their community, taught children, instilling in their minds not only letters, but also kindness. Their house, built with their own hands, was full of life. Neighbors often sat on the porch, discussing the news. Flowers grew in the garden that Selena tended with love, and children's laughter was heard in the house. Will and Selena adopted two children, a boy named David and a girl named Emma, who had lost their parents. They were not just guardians, they were real parents. Will taught David how to shoot a rifle and ride a horse, and Selena taught Emma how to read and write. They were happy. Their family was full of love and happiness. One day, as Will and Selena were sitting on the porch, Will took her hand. We did it, he said. We won. Selena smiled. We won not because we were stronger, she said. We won because we were together. We were together, and we loved each other. And that was our strength. Will nodded, and his eyes filled with tears. You're right, he said. You are my hope. You are my new meaning, and I love you. They kissed. Their life was full of love and happiness. They were together. They were not just two people who were running from danger. They were two people who had found each other, who had found their new meaning, who were ready for what awaited them ahead. They were together, and they were happy. Conclusion. In the story of Will Holiday, we see a path from destruction to healing. Initially, Will was obsessed with revenge, which consumed his soul. After the loss of his family, his life lost its meaning, and he existed only for retribution. However, the meeting with Selena, who was surprisingly similar to his deceased wife, became a turning point. She awakened in him not only the pain of loss, but also a new feeling, the desire to protect. This desire became his new meaning. He realized that revenge, although it can bring temporary satisfaction, is not capable of returning lost happiness. Instead, he chose the path of creation and protection, becoming a reliable partner for Selena. Their shared path, full of dangers and trials, tempered their characters and strengthened their bond. The ending of the story shows that true happiness is not the absence of problems, but the ability to cope with them together. Will and Selena found their peace in a small town, where they built not only a home but also a new life, based on love, trust, and mutual assistance. They became an example of how, after surviving a tragedy, one can find the strength for a new beginning and how love can become the most powerful weapon against despair and hatred.